In 1962, Spider-Man was considered a recipe for disaster. Stan Lee's publisher hated the idea. He thought that people were disgusted by spiders and that teenagers could only ever be sidekicks. The only reason this Spider-Man story even exists in Amazing Fantasy 15 is because the series was being cancelled. With nothing left to lose, Stan and Steve Ditko dumped their weirdest idea into their final issue to essentially get it out of their system. And what they ended up doing completely changed the game forever. Today, we're breaking down those first 11 pages in Spider-Man's comic book debut, where it all began. Yes, that's right. This is the comic book that changed everything. Spider-Man's debut. Hello, and thank you for joining us for another video on the channel. Of course, we're talking about Amazing Fantasy number 15, the debut of a certain Spider-Man. This front cover is about as iconic as it gets. I had this picture on my wall, quite a large picture in my front room for a number of years, and I've never actually sat and read through the comic book. And it won't just be me, there'll be thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who won't have read the comic book and will call themselves Spider-Man fans. That's okay, that's why we're here, so let's read it through together. So we have Spidey swinging here. This is his first ever picture. He's got what I think is, well, he's got what I hope is a bad guy there in his arms. Though the world may mock Peter Parker, the timid teenager, it will soon marvel at the awesome might of Spider-Man. And just what an iconic picture. Just going to let that soak in for a second. I think it's one of the best introductions, one of the best comic book covers, period. But without further ado, let's get into the issue and find out what's happening. And this first page tells us everything we need to know about the character of Peter Parker. We've got a number of high school kids here. The popular group, I imagine, say, we need one more guy for the dance. How about Peter Parker over there? And they say, are you kidding? Not Peter Parker. But what we've got here is Peter stood on his own looking really sad, but his shadow is that of the Spider-Man with the spider above. This picture of Spider-Man up here isn't exactly, I wouldn't say it was consistent with that figure on the front cover. But nonetheless, it is Spidey. He's got the Spidey bits in between his arms and his rib cage. He looks more like a fly than a spider there, unfortunately. But here you've obviously got the Spider-Man, but down here they don't put the hyphen in the Spider-Man. So it just shows you, even on the first page, you're still figuring out what's going on. But this is telling us something about his character straight away. He's not even said a word yet. He stood, he's looking sad, but he looks like he's a smart guy. He's holding some books. They call him a bookworm, so we know he's a smart kid. He's in high school, not very popular, but he is also Spider-Man. I mean, if you didn't know who this character was, you would be intrigued, right? And lots of people were, of course, which is why we have Spider-Man today. So it's here on page 2 that we're introduced to several key characters from the Spider-Man universe. So we've got Uncle Ben up here, waking Peter up, and Peter looks like he's trying to get out of going to school. You've got Aunt May. She's giving him his favourite breakfast. So it's interesting that the Shona's been quite elderly here, and I suppose it depends what Spider-Man media you tend to consume. But Aunt May seems to get younger and younger, doesn't she, with each iteration? But here she is quite old, and this is sort of in keeping with the Aunt May that we would have seen in the Tobey Maguire movies, and probably also the animated series that I grew up with on Fox. He wears a shirt and tie to school. The teachers love him. They think he's great. He asks this girl out. She says no thanks, but along comes Flash Thompson. So he's introduced really early, isn't he, Flash? So he takes over, takes the girl out, and Peter's left to go to the science fair by himself. This bit was quite interesting down here. Someday I'll show him. Someday they'll be sorry. Sorry that they laughed at me. This is almost like a villain origin story, isn't it? It's not a superhero. This could easily have been one of the bad guys. And here is the page, which will be replicated dozens of times across all sorts of media, including other comic books, I imagine, cartoons, movies, TV shows, you name it. It starts here. This is the first time Peter's bitten by the spider. So we see it being doused in radiation up here. Fantastic panel, by the way. I really like that picture. It drops down and bites Peter, and it goes pretty much as you expect. It almost, probably the closest I think I've seen to this is that first Tobey Maguire movie. Very similar to that, I would say. It's interesting to note that in the movies, I think every other piece of media I've ever seen, it doesn't happen straight away. It happens, maybe it takes a day or two for him to notice any effect, but instantly Peter senses that something's changed. His fingers are shown to be yellow. That's for our benefit. But this is the thing, right, with comics, because there's literally only 11 pages. They haven't got time for him to go to sleep and wake up. That's panel space they can't afford to lose. So instantly, boom, he's jumping up on this building out the way of this car. And page 3, he's already wall crawling pretty much. Things are happening at absolute lightning pace here. So the speed in which things are progressing are really fast. This is almost like a montage. So He crawls up the building really fast, and I like this panel here where the kid says he sees a man walking up the building, and his mother says, "That's the last horror movie I'll take you to see." But he reaches up, crushes his pipe, and he instantly realizes it's the spider. And it's almost like a training montage. He's into the Spider-Man groove pretty much instantly. And we see this nice panel here with the spider's web and Peter in the background. So that's just that foreshadowing of him becoming Spider-Man very soon. And before the page is out, he's wrestling. So we're on page 4 and he's already in the wrestling ring. But he needs a costume. I wonder what that might look like. So not quite what I expected. I expected him to be sort of red and blue, a little bit like in that first Tobey Maguire story. I keep referencing that first film because it's almost beat for beat, exactly the same so far, apart from the webbing, which I assume will be different here. So he gets in the ring with Crusher Hogan, dances around him pretty much, a bit like he does with Bonesaw McGraw. And he lifts him up here. I like how he's just peeping through his eyes there. I mean, that's great. So he's playing with him, really. He's all over him. And he realizes it is the spider powers. And this guy who's down here is a shady manager-looking type of guy. Thinks this is absolutely terrific. And it might be just what he's been looking for. And this is it, the page that we're introduced to Spider-Man in his full gear. So Peter's offered an opportunity to go on TV for some money. He takes it and immediately sets to designing a Spider-Man outfit. Now, he creates the webbing. It is artificial. I think it always should be, to be fair. I was never a fan of it being done biologically, but I get what they were going for in the film. It's kind of tough to explain how that technology comes about. I think the Andrew Garfield ones did it a bit better. I liked how he used his science brain to come up with this webbing and the technology behind it. Here it just is. He just creates them and we just have to accept that is what it is. It's good that they sort of the technology hasn't changed much, has it? So that's sort of still with us today, that is. He says it's with some strong liquid cement at the end. So they've gone a little ways to explain what that technology is, and we just sort of accept it because it is what it is. But he calls himself Spider-Man for the first time, and interesting to know that there's no hyphen between Spider and Man, it's just Spider-Man. So I guess the hyphen probably came later after they'd already produced the issue. He's got his web in there, under his arms in each frame. Now we've got part 2 with this incredible picture to kick us off of Spidey doing some wall crawling with a rather suspect right leg, I will say. But these are early days. He's a bit more stick thin, isn't he, rather than the muscly Spider-Man that I normally imagine. But he's performing all these feats, and everyone, look at these guys down here. They can't believe it. They can't believe it. Putting off all these tricks, and they're telling us that they're amazed. You would be too if you were there, and we're amazed as well, actually, just reading it through the page, aren't we? This page threw me for a loop, and it didn't quite go as I expected. I saw the panels, and I immediately knew where it was going, but it didn't quite go as I thought. So you're up here, you've got everyone wants a piece of Spider-Man, put you in the movies, want an interview, and he says, "See my agent, boys, I'm busy." That's not the sort of attitude you expect from Spider-Man. It's early days, obviously, so he's not quite the hero yet, is he? But you've got they go straight to this panel here where you've got the guy running past. They shout, "Stop him! He's a thief!" And Spider-Man says, "Hey, what's going on?" He runs past, and Spider says, "Hey, well, not my problem. I don't care." Interesting, isn't it? How again going back to that Tobey Maguire movie. He's wronged by the managers first, isn't he? So you can sort of sympathise with Spidey a little bit as to why he let Robber go. In this introduction, he just doesn't care, does he? It is almost like that villain origin story, isn't it? So he's just like, well, who cares? Not my problem. But back home, he's given a new microscope that he's always wanted. And he basically says, I love my aunt and my uncle, and the rest of the world can sod off, basically. So he's got that smile on his face. Things are going great. Got a bit of a ways to go, haven't we, before we get to the Spider-Man that we know and love. So, like I say, just very interesting how it's handled differently here. So, in all future adaptations, I think Spider-Man is sort of, I'm not going to say justified in letting the robber go. We know he obviously isn't, but it's interesting that here he isn't really sort of given any incentive to let the guy go. He just doesn't care. And that's interesting that they changed that up in future adaptations. The Spider-Man story starts to pick up pace now because you've got this first great panel where he's webbing around and he's winning all these awards. Everyone loves Spider-Man. Who is he? But he goes home just as plain old Peter Parker, and there's a police car. His uncle's been shot. Uncle Ben always gets shot. That is just a constant, no matter what adaptation you're watching or reading. And he says, who shot him? I don't know, but he's at this warehouse. Peter knows where it is. He runs off, becomes Spider-Man. And I think we all know what's coming next, don't we? And we get that first bit of web slinging here, don't we? So he's webbing onto the street light. whip him round, and he gets to the warehouse and he surprises the thief here. So this guy can't believe what he's seeing, and Spider-Man says, "You're surprised to see me?" I imagine he probably is. Again, this is paralleling that Tobey Maguire movie really closely. So if you're interested in watching something that sort of mirrors this debut, that Tobey Maguire movie is really close at the moment. And we come to the last page in this debut now, so we haven't seen this thief's face up until now. So Spider-Man tackles him, punches him, and he says, "Oh no, that face, I can't believe it. It's the guy I let escape, the thief." And it's one of those inevitable things. It's like an anchor point in all Spider-Man stories. Uncle Ben must be killed by this guy he's let go. This is how we get Spider-Man, who learns about responsibility. But Spider-Man webs him up and lets him get caught by the police. That's where it changes a little bit. So I think, in the Tobey Maguire movie, sorry to keep going back to that movie, but it's the obvious parallel. But in that movie, the guy slips over that pipe, he trips over it, falls to his death. And I don't know that, I'm struggling to think of any other adaptation where the guy survives, but here he lets him live. Just interesting about his eyes up here. He's got the pupils in them. I get what they're going for there, but that's obviously something you won't see in the future. It's just that pure white eyes, isn't it? But it's just interesting to notice there. Spider-Man goes around the corner, takes his mask off. You've got that human underneath Peter. It ends with Peter, which is great. It starts with Peter and ends with Peter. But he says, "It's my fault. I should have stopped him, and I didn't." And this lean, silent figure slowly fades away into the gathering darkness. So he walks away with his head down, but a legend is born. And that's the end of the issue, actually. So it's not like he's sailing off into the sunset in the first issue. This is that hardcore origin story. It's a really depressing ending, isn't it? So as a fan, I'd be hooked straight away. I mean, I'm already a huge fan of Spider-Man anyway. But if you were reading this and you didn't know who the character was, you would have to know what happens next, wouldn't you? So on that note, let's jump ahead to March 1963, where we see the Amazing Spider-Man is given his own comic. Obviously, a huge breakout success. And I don't think anyone expected it at Marvel, except for the two guys who created the character. But here we see him in that very smartly crossing it over with the Fantastic Four. That's really been the comic driving the success at Marvel up until this point. So before Spider-Man, before X-Men, it was all about Fantastic Four. So having them in this first issue with Spider-Man is obviously going to be a huge boost. Spider-Man's looking more like Spider-Man that I think of, a lot more muscular. Still got the webbing, but I think we're going to come to this issue with the chameleon in there as well. We'll do that in the next Spider-Man video we're going to do, but just my thoughts on the issue we've just read. I thought it was a fantastic debut. So much better than I thought it was going to be, actually. I don't know what I expected, but it's great. I said this about the X-Men issues, that the origins have really stuck the test of time. I mean, not much has changed at all. I mean, you could present that now. All of those story elements hold up today. I would say the only thing that has changed slightly is the thief, the villain, Peter's motivations when it comes to that guy. But 95% of that story is pretty much what holds up today. So I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I'm really glad to have had a chance to read it. Being able to read all these comic books at a touch of a finger is absolutely fantastic. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. I've enjoyed making it. I hope you've enjoyed watching it. And please give us a like and subscribe, and please stick around. We'll do more Spider-Man videos. We've been doing X-Men videos as well. Going to do as many as we can. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.